I'm Jason Jorgensen. It is once again time for Husker Chat. It's brought to you by Acres Equipment as we talk Husker football with Sean Callahan of Husker Online. Well, Sean, a big home game last week for Nebraska. A lot of folks were hoping the Huskers could jump up and upset Illinois. That did not happen. Kind of a disappointing game in a number of different facets. As you look at things going into this week with the game with Minnesota, how do the Huskers put that in the rearview mirror and bounce back against a pretty decent Gopher squad?
Yeah, Jason, obviously a very tough Saturday. I mean, it felt like such an opportunity for Nebraska at home, great weather in Memorial Stadium, national televised game. And then, the Casey Thompson injury happened late second quarter, and then the game never came back from that moment. I mean, you go back to Nebraska was winning 9-6. Ramir Johnson was streaking open. They threw a perfect play call to him. He dropped it. After that play, Nebraska had like 36 total yards of offense the rest of the game on 30 snaps. Casey Thompson was injured a couple of plays later after that drop pass. And it was just, they weren't ready for that situation. And I think now the challenge with Minnesota coming in is getting a quarterback ready for this week. Whether that's Chubba Purdy, whether that's Logan Smothers, or if Casey Thompson can get himself back, but then having a plan, because clearly after the injury to Casey, they just didn't really have much of a plan that could be executed by either one of those quarterbacks.
Did that surprise you that it looked so much different? And everybody knows the starter's going to get most of the reps, but you would have thought that it had maybe a little better of a fighting chance with Chubba Purdy. And we saw, Logan Smothers last year. He wasn't bad against Iowa last year.
I mean, backup quarterback situations that we've seen over the years are typically like this anywhere you go, especially when you don't have a week to prep the guy as the starter. I go back to Michigan when Denard Robinson got hurt. They brought a backup guy and he did terrible. Nebraska beat him in Memorial Stadium. Ohio State came in to Lincoln. I believe it's Nebraska's only win, and they had their quarterback Braxton Miller get hurt, and a backup named Joe Bauserman came in, and Nebraska handled them. So it's not uncommon, Jason, when the starter that's prepped all week gets hurt kind of like abruptly in a game, that the backup is just not as prepared, because it's very, very difficult to give two guys quality number one game reps. Now, with that said, this week, Mickey Joseph has said that Logan Smothers and Chubba Purdy are rotating the number one reps. So they are trying to make sure both of these guys are ready for this game here on Saturday against Minnesota.
What was your read on how the defense played against Illinois? They were gouged in some aspects, but if the offense wouldn't have gone dead in the second half, at least they did give them a chance to hang in the game and maybe potentially steal one.
Yeah, I mean, they got some key stops. They forced a turnover, but they couldn't get off the field on some third downs. That'd be the one critical thing. But when your offense turns it over 4 times, it's very hard for the defense. But with that said, Illinois only scored 6 points on 2 field goals the entire second half. So they hung in there long enough for Nebraska to have a chance. And there was even a moment when Nebraska got a stop, they got the ball, and they had a chance to cut it back to a 7-point game. And the offense fell flat, I believe, turned it over. So it was a tough day all around because the defense had some moments. But then Tommy DeVito goes 20-22 for them. And he was very effective in managing that game for Brett Bielema.
Today on Husker Chat, we're talking with Sean Callahan as we take a look back at the loss to Illinois and the upcoming game with Minnesota. Husker Chat brought to you by Acres Equipment. Sean, how about this Minnesota bunch? They looked pretty good early on, and then they were stung by Purdue. This is a very experienced team that does a lot of things well, and they're hard to prepare for.
Yeah, multiple 6-year seniors that play key roles, led by Tanner Morgan, who has started and won, I believe, over 40 games in his career as the Gophers starting quarterback. So he's as winning of a quarterback in terms of total wins in his career as there is right now in college football. And when you have a leader like that knows who he is and kind of plays like a coach on the field, he gives them a chance almost every time they play. They didn't have him against Penn State, and they dropped off quite a bit. So Tanner Morgan played a week ago. They looked outstanding against Rutgers. I mean, Rutgers did not do any. I mean, Rutgers' offense had in the hundreds total for that game on the Gopher defense. And then Morgan in that offense really did a great job. Mo Ibrahim, the running back, on pace to have his third 1,000-yard rushing season for the Gophers. You could make a case he's every bit, if not better, than Illinois' Chase Brown.
What's your take on the coaching search? It's been pretty quiet. You surprised by that, or is this kind of the way you thought this would develop?
Well, it should be quiet. When you're talking about coaches that are coaching other teams, you can't really have things about them being talked about with a month of the season left. It would be, I've never seen it before. So I get asked that question, why is it so quiet? But have you ever seen a guy with 4 games left to go, like step down and say, yep, I'm leaving my school to go to Nebraska right now. So a lot of this will play out at the end of the season, and it's really tough. And I knew that when they fired Frost on September 11th, this was going to be a 3-month grind where we're just like, man, and we still have 4 weeks to go, 4 games to go. And I think after the Iowa game, it will move fairly quickly. And let's say it is Mickey Joseph. We'd probably know before the Iowa game if that's the route they'd go. But Trev has really kept, I think, this very close to the vest, and that's how it should be done.
I was going to say, you have to be impressed at this point. Not a lot of leaks out of the Nebraska athletic department.
Yeah, when you use a search firm, though, that's what you pay for. I mean, we've seen that over the years. I mean, I'll never forget a long time ago, Iowa State used a search firm, and they hired Gene Chizik, and literally going into the press conference, nobody knew it was Gene Chizik when he was their coach. So if you use a search firm, you can get a real surprise at the end. Mike Riley was definitely a real surprise, and Nebraska announced him. I'm not sure that was the surprise people wanted. I'm not even sure iCourse really used a search firm back then for that deal. But yeah, search firms make it interesting because they work behind channels, and it's very rare that that information gets out.
All right, how about Saturday's game? How does Nebraska potentially find a way with a backup quarterback to hang around and make this interesting and maybe steal one from the Gophers?
They've got to run it better. I think the inability to establish running the ball has hurt them. And, it just, they can't expect these quarterbacks to throw it at a high level for Nebraska. They've got to be better with the short, controlled passes. They've got to get Trey Palmer back involved. He had 7 targets Saturday, 1 catch for 1 yard. That ain't going to get it done. I mean, they've got to do a better job of getting probably what is their best player, Palmer, involved on the field.
All right, we'll see how it develops on Saturday in Lincoln. Sean, as always, we appreciate your time.
Hey, thanks, Jason.
That was Sean Callahan, Husker Online, joining us for Husker Chat. We're here every week. It's brought to you by Acres Equipment. I'm Jason Jorgensen.